tank. When it's sink or swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it's sink or swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Want to put it all together. This is big things. Doing big things. Chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real. This life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream. All the dudes yell. This is just what I do and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, but homie, keep going. You know the saying, you gon' reap what you sow in. So I don't chase girls. I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Roadie 2016. Like a phone to die, putting me in charge. I'm a general from the front, I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank. This is Roland Kidwell. I'm sitting in for the host, Jason Hill, who is out in Las Vegas gambling and doing a few other things that he can not tell us about when he gets back. Everything in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? And we're in the Oz Digital Studio, and the Shrimp Tank, powered by Celsius, is proud to welcome our guest, Dr. Brett Osborn, today. We're going to have a new co-host with us as well, Jessica Beaver, and she is the Associate Director of Tech Runway here at Florida Atlantic University. And also need to mention, too, that we work with Jason as members of the Adams Center for Entrepreneurship here at Florida Atlantic. So, Jessica, welcome. We will come to our guest in a minute, but why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what's going on at Tech Runway?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am sitting in for Dr. Kevin Cox, and I'm thrilled to be here. So my name is Jessica, and I run Tech Runway, which is an incubator for early stage startups in the South Florida region. So Tech Runway, oh my goodness, what are we doing? This spring, we have 4 venture classes that are overlapping, which is pretty intense. So about 40 companies. We just completed a pitch competition where we gave out over $10,000 in seed funding. And we're prepping for this new class to kick off while also working really closely with the Adams Center, their veterans program, their boot camp, and just continuing to explore ways to support our entrepreneurs and the community at large. So
yes,
lots of good stuff.
Fantastic. And next week, we have Veterans Program Continues, where some legal and human resource experts will be talking to our veteran entrepreneurs and prepping them as they move forward on their ventures. Also next week, we're going to have a family business conference, all in Spanish, in cooperation from a university with the university in Argentina we're working with. And we've been working a lot with universities as well as small business development centers in Chile, but also in Argentina with this university. And we will be hosting some guests and talking about issues involving family business, family office, building wealth in family businesses. So if you happen to be interested in that, just email me and I'll give you information. Of course, it is in Spanish, so that might be the difficult part. Well, welcome to our guest, Dr. Brett Osborn. And Dr. Osborn has a lot of different things he can talk to us about today. But first, I wanted to get him to pronounce correctly his business that he has started here and tell us a little bit about what that's all about.
Right. So the business is called Senolytics, and that's derived from the word senescent and the word lysis, meaning age busting, basically. Senolytics, spelled with a C out of the X at the end, are basically a class of molecules that you'll soon to be hearing about that mitigate a large component of the aging process, namely the introduction of inflammatory chemicals into the bloodstream. So as our cells get older, they become senescent and they start secreting these bad things that accelerate the aging process. So vascular disease, for example, the development of atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, things like that. Those are all inflammatory processes. And if you had an agent, a senolytic drug or agent, and some of them come in the form of supplements, you theoretically could reduce the burden of these older cells and thereby limit the amount of introduction of these inflammatory chemicals into the bloodstream. So that's where the word senolytics came from. It's just a play on words.
Okay. And you are also, the reason you know all of these things, I think you're a neurosurgeon.
Correct. I am.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into this new business after being a long time and continuing on as a neurosurgeon.
Right. So I guess I've been in this business my entire life. I've always been very, very interested in human performance and optimization. And when I was about, I would say halfway through my 7-year residency at NYU, I came to the realization that the majority of the diseases that we were treating there, even cancers, but more so degenerative diseases of the spine, so arthritis, things like that, these were to a great degree products of bad choices that people make. So let me give you an example.
I'm a living example.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Most people are. It's lack of exercise, proper exercise, improper nutrition, not taking the right supplements, things like that. If you were able to do these things properly, you would dramatically slow the progression or the development of these diseases. And for lack of a better term, we'll just call the diseases that afflict the spine. And I'm not talking about cancers, arthritis. And so many people have these diseases. And that is just one example of many other degenerative diseases that are within our control. That's what we teach in the clinic. So I have a hybrid type of practice where I teach patients about longevity, how to stay healthy long-term and extend what's called their health span, so the time during which they remain fully functional and disease-free. And I also have a neurosurgical practice. My neurosurgical practice is geared not towards degenerative disease any longer because, quite frankly, I don't want to do it. I'd rather teach people how to stay healthy, be healthy, instead of operating on them after the fact. So my neurosurgery practice is exclusively geared towards the management of neurosurgical trauma patients, so brain and spine injured patients. That's it. So emergency damage control, life-saving surgery, excuse me.
Oh, yeah. So you have senolytics, and then you have your separate standalone neurosurgery focused practice. Is that correct? Am I understanding?
That's correct. And in my mind, and for the folks who are watching, these practices are basically, they're on a spectrum. So if you don't do the things that we teach in the longevity medicine practice, and I don't like to use the word anti-aging because it sounds like anti-death. Yeah. So we're moving away from that, just longevity medicine. If you don't do those things, you're potentially going to be victimized by all these diseases that are associated with aging, so-called age-related diseases. And you can call them whatever you want. You can call them arthritis. You can call them cancer, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's disease. The underpinnings of these diseases are the same.
That's really great. It's interesting you're doing this, and this is a great area to be doing this. I know in South Florida. I'm going to ask a quick question
Sure.
from the business side, because I work with entrepreneurs and startups, and I know many of our viewers might fall under this umbrella. You are a very busy man. You are chief of neurosurgery. You have multiple practices. You're an educator. You're a presenter. How do you balance all of that? And is there any tips or anything that you learned going through this process of creating your own business and businesses outside of, let's say, the hospital, of managing and getting set up, or any pain points through that process that maybe you can share?
Well, those two ladies sitting over there are, to a great degree, responsible for sort of managing me and managing my. No, I'm serious. You must have a team of people that assist you. That's for one thing. And I would say, first and foremost, though, is figuring out what you are passionate about, and then chasing down that and basically eliminating the things. And as you, I would say, generate more revenue streams, you can become more and more selective about things that you want to do, but more specifically, the things that you don't want to do. So as I had said to Roland, something that I don't want to do is treat degenerative diseases of the spine, right? So arthritis. Neurosurgeons in general make their living on treating arthritic conditions of the spine, right? I mean, how many people do you know that have had low back surgery, neck surgery, fusions, things like that. I don't want to do that. I'd rather teach people how to prevent those diseases as opposed to treating those diseases when they're in trouble. A lot of those surgeries, just for one thing, don't work, which is why you have a lot of the horror stories about people that have had failed back syndrome, failed surgery. It's because we're trying to treat a disease that really shouldn't be treated surgically, and that's neck pain and back pain. I'm not talking about somebody who has a weak arm or pain in an arm or pain in a leg. I'm talking about axial pain, so pain along the spinal axis itself. That shouldn't be treated, in my opinion, and many other neurosurgeons' opinion, surgically, right? It should be treated with diet, exercise, things like that. So I don't want to do that. I'd rather teach people coming from the opposite end. But again, these are on a spectrum. But the answer to your question, which is a great question, is you need to find the things that you're passionate about, and you need to eliminate the things that you don't want to be doing. And as your business evolves, and again, as you have the luxury of multiple revenue streams, you're more able to do that as time goes by.
I think that's a great point. And I think it also ties into, there's a saying of follow the money, but there's also follow the passion, because if you're not passionate about something, you might start, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, because sometimes the money is the motivator, but
it's not going to work.
It's not long term.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's not.
Yeah.
That's correct. And I will tell you that if you chase down your passions vehemently, aggressively, unapologetically, the money will be there.
That's great. Yeah.
So Jessica did mention this is a really good market in South Florida. So I assume there are a fair number of longevity-focused businesses. What is your niche? What is it that sets you apart from all of these others that are out there saying, do this, do that, and you can deal with these diseases?
Yeah, and this isn't an arrogant comment, but the differentiator is me. I've been in this space, as I had alluded to previously, my entire life. So I started training when I was 10. I grew up in a holistic family. My father is a practicing chiropractor. He's 80. Actually, he's in semi-retirement now, but that was just as of the last 6 months or so. So I grew up in a very, very holistic household, and there was always this emphasis on proper nutrition, exercise, supplements. My dad used to take, I don't know, it was probably 100 pills every morning. I remember, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, watching him take all of these pills every morning, and these things rub off on you. Mm-hmm. But I was always interested in how I could, initially it was this, how I could shape my body, how I could remain strong, how I can be performing at an optimal level in school, whether it was high school, college, medical school, it continues to this day. So I'm a competitive power lifter. We're competing actually at the end of July, and that's really a gut check for me. I'm 53 years old, but I want to beat my existing state deadlifting record in July, and I continue to try to push that. I ride motorcycles, the motorcycles that you see these guys speeding around on at 100 miles an hour on the freeway. Why?
So that's you.
That is me, and it's 100% me, and that's because I like the way it's not an adrenaline junkie. People think that that's what it is. No, I like to feel hyper focused, which is one of the reasons why I like doing what I do, which is rush in there at 2:00 in the morning, mm-hmm. in the middle of the night when somebody's dying, and help them and save them. These are the things that I like doing. Those are sort of gut checks. Those are keeping my brain optimal, my body optimal by virtue of the strength training, the heavy strength training, the proper nutrition, supplements, et cetera, et cetera.
It has to resonate with your patients and the people you work with too, because you do practice what you preach. If you're teaching health and
100%, and it absolutely does. And there are people, and again, this is not this braggadocious comment. This is just, it is what it is. There are people that want to see the muscular neurosurgeon. They just want to see that because, like you said, mm-hmm. there is something to be said about walking the walk, and that I think is a big differentiator in our practice. Let alone a lot of these practices that you hear about, these anti-aging practices, They're very, very focused on cosmesis, which is fine.
Botox, right?
Yep. They're very, very much focused, and a lot of them are not run by physicians.
Okay. Okay. So the question then from you're the key, you're the niche. How do you replicate and scale this business?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I have been through that ad nauseum with my son, who is one of my sons, who's the acting COO of the business. It's a very, very difficult problem, and the way you could potentially scale it would be, I would say, in the digital space. And we have a very, very robust representation or footprint in the digital space. And that's something that obviously is going to be expanded. You have to be careful, though, right? You can't. What I don't want to be doing is I don't want to be offering these telehealth services as an example and putting people on, call it scheduled drugs like hormones, et cetera, if they're remote from me and they're not actually in the office, which is why we demand anybody that is on any of these medications, so our sort of higher tier service line, they must be in the office initially and then subsequently on an annual basis, because we are writing these medications. I am uncomfortable writing people for any of these scheduled drugs virtually.
Sure.
So we just
Makes
don't.
sense,
Yes,
yeah.
we just don't. So it's a great question as far as scaling. It would, and when I say we would scale it in the digital space, we have an email series that's out right now. In other words, it's a 30-day, one-day email series with all sorts of tips and tricks related to health and longevity. That's one way. We offer telehealth consultations. However, those are just consultations where I give recommendations to not patients, right? Just individuals who are very, very interested in health and longevity and have a full set of labs, and I go through the labs with them, but we're not prescribing anything because I don't believe, again, in writing these, in prescribing these scheduled medications virtually.
Have you thought about enlisting like-minded physicians, maybe franchising this?
I have, but again, it's sort of the same problem,
Okay.
right? In other words, there has to be another one of me, and I'm not saying there's not. I just don't know of one at this point. I really don't.
It makes sense. I mean, I can see where, like you said, you are the face.
Well,
this is your brand.
It's
this is
right. I say
your
that
expertise.
correct.
And so you would be putting your name behind somebody. It's an important part of who you are
Right.
and what your business provides to your patients.
It's probably a bad business model, quite frankly. In other words, because you really can't scale it, by opening up other clinics, because there's a large percentage of our current patients who want to see and interact with me. So it's just one of these things that was not done on purpose. It wasn't engineered that way. It's just what we have come to realize by making a lot of mistakes over the years.
So how long have you been doing this?
Formally?
Yeah.
So
where you formed the company, Synolytics.
Right. So Synolytics, actually, that moniker was submitted, I guess, to the state. It's only been about 3 or 4 years. However, we've been under a different corporate veil since 2015, and I was actually doing this type of work, albeit on a less robust scale, when I practiced in West Virginia. So dating back to 2008, but again, it's just sort of the clinical incarnate of my life.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
If that makes sense.
So I have been to a VIP concierge. It was an amazing experience, everyone. It's amazing. And I really loved the things I loved about it is the one-on-one time with the doctors, the personalization. You don't realize how rushed you are, or you feel subconsciously. I'm not saying, outside of VIP concierge services that other doctors aren't doing it correctly, but it's just a different feeling. Sometimes there's a whole waiting room of people and you're feeling like you're in and out, whereas this was like a really great experience, obviously different than what you're doing. Can you explain a little bit more about the 4 services that you offer and the concierge level, and just give a little bit more background about that? Because I was on your site and I was like, ooh, this is great. And you have an elite and you have all of these little levels here. What exactly, for everybody watching, what are those levels? How does that work in your
And that's a great question, and we have batted that around the service lines, if you want to call them that, for years, and the young ladies here are involved with that and parsing through that information and how we best can offer these products to patients. First of all, let me just address what you had said initially, namely the fact that the healthcare system as it exists today is a failed system. It's completely broken. If you go to a doctor with your health insurance, it doesn't matter if it's a PPO, open access, it doesn't matter. You're getting 15 minutes with the doctor. That's it. Why? Because the insurance company reimbursements are so poor that it's hard for these guys to stay afloat, which is why you're seeing this mass migration into hospital or hospital system owned practices, so that they can salary the doctors and they don't have to be so worried about churning through patients on a daily basis. In other words, C30, C50.
Oh, I know. The waiting room has 30 people in it.
That's
yeah.
correct. I pride myself, and I always tell my patients, my new patients, look outside in the waiting room. We have none. And that's by design. So the answer to your question about the tiering, yes, there's an elite service, there's an essential service, there's an express service, and then there's a telehealth, and there's sort of a weight loss service. The elite service is very, very similar to the essential service, and it's full concierge service. But what is added to that is one-on-one, I'll call them accountability calls with me on a monthly basis, plus a cancer screening, a liquid biopsy, if you will. And we use a test called Gallery, which screens for about 50 different types of cancer. So those two are bolted on to the essential package. The essential package is a very, very in-depth screening protocol. At first, we look at people, if you will, through a variety of lenses. We can call them blood work. So it's a full battery of labs. We use ultrasound. Everybody gets a carotid ultrasound, right? Most of us die of vascular disease, right? You're only as old as your arteries, said one famous surgeon, right? Well, it's true. Heart attack and stroke are first, followed by cancer, right? Period. End of story. Most of us die vascular deaths. So we look at everybody's carotids. We do an echocardiogram on everyone. Everybody gets a scan of their heart. We look at everybody's thyroid. We found cancers that have been removed unbeknownst to the patient. Not the surgery was unbeknownst to the patient, but they didn't know that they had thyroid cancer. We look at the aorta. We look at the femoral arteries. We do what's called a vascular reactivity test, which basically tells us how well your vasculature, your blood vessels open up and contract, which is an indirect measure of vascular health or lack thereof. There's a cognitive test. All sorts of things that we're doing to basically stratify your risk for the development of these age-related diseases. So again, cancer, diabetes, heart attack, stroke. Then after that's done, then you sit with my nurse practitioner initially, and then with me, that examination time during which we're reviewing things, the results of those tests, how much body fat you have, why you need to improve your skeletal muscle mass. We prescribe during that 3-hour period a whole host of things, starting with a nutritional program that is geared towards your what's called anthropometry, because we're looking at body fat, we're looking at BMR, we're looking at your skeletal muscle mass on a certain type of scale. It's something else that we do. Strength training, supplements, medications, and we counsel people regarding stress reduction and managing their stress. So you are in the office. You are in the office for that initial evaluation, somewhere between 4 and 5 hours.
Wow.
And this is the elite service, or the?
Well, this is the elite, this is the elite and the essential. The difference between the essential and the elite is that the elite has, after that, for the remainder of the year, accountability calls with me on a monthly basis. And those are somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes. I just had about 5 of them yesterday, plus that cancer screening test. So there are a couple of bolt-ons, but basically the service lines are very, very similar.
Okay. When people come to you, are they coming to you already in pain, or are they coming to you attempting to avoid? In other words, how much of this is preventive and how much of it is reactive?
So that's a great question. And there are 2 subsets of patients that we have. So I just labeled them very, very generically, segment 1 and segment 2. Segment 1 are the folks, guys and gals, who are looking at a younger age, so say 30 to 40, to, like me, stay as optimal as possible, keep their brain and their bodies working, and stave off aging and age-related disease. Then you have the other subset, as you had alluded to, who are in pain. It's not like, well, they're in pain and they come to me because I'm not treating their pain, although there is pain associated with aging, as you had alluded to before, right? So they may have joint pain, as an example. Most commonly in that age group, what we're seeing is people, sure, they have joint pain, but also their libido's down. Their brain isn't working nearly as well. They're having problems losing body fat. They can't maintain muscle mass. And all of these things are risk factors for diseases that start really coming to fruition once you're in your 60s and you sort of go off that cliff. It's not straight down, but you start doing this. And if you look at the McKinsey data, 50% of Americans, 50% of Americans that are 60 and above are going like this. So they're on the down slope of this curve, which is sort of.
That's why I want to come see you in the next 48 hours. I mean.
Right. It's sort of a scary statistic, but it's a great question. We have these, like I said, we just have these these two classes of patients, if you want, segment 1 and sort of segment 2. I would say the majority of people fall into segment 2, and I would say that's 45 to 70 or so. The median age in our clinic is 49.
Mm-hmm. How easy is it to get in there, to get an appointment?
Easy.
It is. Okay.
Yes, it is.
And is this something that you don't take any health insurance? This is something that is totally separate from that, right?
Right. It is extremely, extremely resource intensive. Like I said,
you mean expensive?
Yes. Well, and it is. It just depends. You know, in other words, we're dealing. I would say the majority of the people that are in our clinic are relatively price insensitive.
Mm-hmm.
They value their health, where they understand that if they end up in the emergency room one time with chest pain, a stroke, anything, something even more minor, you're going to be paying out $15,000. That's what's going to end up happening to you. So it's a good investment, if you will, for an individual to make.
I mean, I'm thinking just even you mentioned the cancer panel and the fact that at least I'm seeing more and more people who are younger coming out with cancer that normally was viewed as something over a certain age. So just even the list of resources you're providing, the younger, say 30, under 45 group, I mean, we kind of have to look for that now too. And it's important, and people don't think about that. And then, we're just seeing it's more prevalent. At least I feel like it's becoming more prevalent. So what you're providing is important.
You are 100% correct. And I just helped contributed to a piece that was published on Fox News about a week and a half ago on just that.
Wow.
Because, they had asked me why I thought that was occurring. And it's by virtue of the fact that the younger generation, they're all doing this. Right? They're doing this, or they're doing this all day. That sedentary lifestyle dramatically increases your chances for the development of all of these diseases, and in particular, as does their bad diet, and in particular, obesity. Obesity is a gateway disease to all these diseases. If you look at the incidence of, say, Alzheimer's disease, cancer in obese patients, it far exceeds that of somebody with a normal body habitus. Far exceeds. It's a gateway disease to all of these diseases. So one of the big focal points of our clinic visits, I want the body fat down into normal ranges, into optimal ranges, and I want the skeletal muscle mass up. So your muscle mass up.
Let me just ask you one more before I take a break in terms of being an entrepreneur.
Sure.
What is your biggest challenge being an entrepreneur? Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? I assume you do, but what is your biggest challenge?
I guess, and if you're talking about something that is business focused, in other words, this specific business, it would be patient accruement. Okay. It's not delivering the services. We are really, really good at delivering the services, really, really good. The majority of the people, and it's 95% plus, have a remarkable experience in our office when they come. However, there is a big disconnect. And again, this is my business specific answer. There is a big disconnect between what somebody needs or their perception of needs and where they exist now. So in order to create a pain point, because things are sold based upon, if you will, and this is something that is being marketed to people, so it's being sold, there has to be some sort of pain point, right? With health, if you're walking around and you're 60 years old and you're a little bit overweight and nothing has happened to you thus far, but we know that you're on sort of this precipice, 50%, okay, are on this sort of precipice of going over the edge. There's no pain. Somebody like that is less likely to become a patient because they don't see it. So if you have foresight, like segment 1, they understand that I better do something now in order to prevent this later, great. But as you had said about pain, if there is no, or there are people who do have pain, but if you cannot, in your marketing, create that pain point, and it's hard because people feel fine until they don't, until they're in the emergency room. If you can't create that pain point, patient accruement is not going to be where you want. This is a very, very, very difficult, if you will, sell. And this is just being very, very granular about it from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Health is hard to sell because there's no pain associated with it when you have, well, you think you have your health. How do you sell that to somebody, particularly at a high price point?
It almost sounds like you have to retrain the patients.
You do.
That's
You,
that
you,
pain point.
listen, you have to educate the patients. It took $1 billion for Nike to educate people. I'm sure you know the statistic as to what a swoosh was, right? So what is that, right? Who right? Who came up with that, right? So it's one of those things where we need to commit significant amount of resources on educating potential patients as to what we had just spoken about. Namely, if you don't do something now, you're going to pay on the back end.
Right. Okay, well, let's continue our conversation with Dr. Osborn in a minute after we hear from one of our sponsors.
Join the fastest growing community of professionals on the internet with OWL. Access new networks and otherwise unreachable professional contacts through the one-on-one call feature on the app. Scroll through the list of available professionals and join them for a quick call to build rich connections, expand invaluable relationships, and to broaden your professional landscape without needing lofty referrals. OWL. We bring vetted pros to your doorstep 24/7 on demand. Join our community by signing up at owl.com today.
Okay, we're back.
Holy cow. That was fast.
We're back.
We just continued talking.
Yes, well, we do that. We tend to talk. We're professors. We do that. So this segment of the show is called What's Hot? And so what we're kind of looking at here is what's hot? What do you see as hot? And I guess what I would do is start with the bodybuilding aspect. Is that really hot? Do you find that, or is that something you're kind of unique as a bodybuilder?
Right. Well, right. And I always like to, I don't know what you mean by hot. Okay. But I'm just going to sort of downplay the bodybuilding thing because that is what I am not actually. So I always tell people, right, I'm more of a power lifter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
Power
right, no. And that's totally fine because it's often said in my clinic, in other words, there's somebody that's using the term bodybuilding. I always tell them, look, the bodybuilding look is this side effect of the lifestyle and side effect of the health. Anybody, if they follow the protocols and they're unwavering, again, unapologetically aggressive, and it's sort of a no BS clinic, I'm sure you can tell, you'd be very, very surprised at how you can change your body. So the guys and gals I was speaking to yesterday during these accountability calls, I always ask them, what did you look like when you graduated college? Right? If aesthetics is sort of an endpoint for them, and for a lot of people, it is. They want to look look good. It builds confidence in addition to just the aesthetic aspects of it. And I always tell them that if you do what you're told to do and you follow the protocol, there's no reason, even if you're 50 years old, that you can't look like when you were 21. My physique is far better now at 53 than it was when I was 18. And I was lifting heavy weights and doing the things that I should have been doing, except I knew a lot less. You're stupid when you're younger. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Invincible and stupid.
Right. And it's totally true.
So what's hot in marketing this this clinic? What's hot about, how do you go about it? What do you find to be hot to do it? You're pointing your finger at your, so public relations.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, you have to have a good team of people. You have to have new eyes on it. So my son, who is the one who is the acting COO of the company, he is probably going to go into, I'll call it fintech. He's up at school in the Northeast, and yes, he's into it because he's into powerlifting like me, and he's into human performance. But you need a set of eyes that I would say is outside of your specialty, namely just medicine in general, to take a look with some and apply some sort of business acumen. And I think that's how you are going to move the needle. So you need to ask a lot of people, a lot of questions, survey people, get people with outside interests, again, a foreign set of eyes, so to speak. And I think that potentially will help you generate ideas as to how to market to these folks. We are marketing to a very niche sort of subset of the population. This is not a hormone clinic. This is not a testosterone clinic, and there are a ton of these, and a lot of them go out of business. This is sort of a niche clinic for people that want more, so to speak, of their health, of their physicality, and have the means to do it. So you have to, it's like, how do you market to the affluent, right? And not that it's necessarily for the affluent, but it's certainly, at a higher price point. This is not, going to one of these, clinics where they do the initial examination for $199.
You get a B12 shot.
That's
or
right.
Something, right?
And they're all over the place. And I'm not going to go and,
Right.
Name any. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Right here. We are completely different from those types of.
So how do you market that? What do you do? What has been
We-
successful? You don't buy a Google ad, or
We do.
okay.
We do. But the answer to your question is we haven't figured it out quite yet. We have not. And I will tell you that nobody really has. One thing I can tell you that we're really, really good at is screwing up and making a ton of mistakes. And you know what? I don't care. Okay. Because, you sort of, you run towards the obstacles, if you will. You make the mistakes, you refine, and you get a little bit better. Then you make mistakes and you refine, you analyze, refine, and you get a little bit better. So I don't mind failing as long as we're not making the same mistake twice.
You're talking about marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
That's a
But just in business. So I've never minded doing that, even if it
Right.
cost me. I mean, listen, I just had a billboard. The practice just had a billboard up on 95 and Southern, about a quarter mile east of my practice. One of these huge, very, very, very visible billboards, and it was an in-your-face billboard. There's me standing there, just in a pair of scrubs with no shirt on. It's aggressive. How do you think that did? How do you think the billboard did? And you're talking about, I don't know, 100,000 people probably see this thing in a day, at least for a second.
Well, you could have got a date probably.
So I got no dates. Okay. I got no dates. And how do you think it actually did as far as, patient accruement or how much?
Probably not
Not
well.
very well.
Horribly. Okay. At a very, very high.
Well, that's the thing with advertising. You waste half your money, but you don't know what half you're wasting it on. I think.
But I think your mentality about it all is exactly what a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses need to hear. Is you are going to fail. like there's going to be successes, but it's how you react when you fail. And there was this saying, I just heard it actually, fail means first attempt in learning. So it's a mental way to turn it around. So you're not like, oh, I didn't do something right. It's like, well, I learned what not to do.
Right.
So now what do I do next? It's a pivot. And,
And-
that's a great way to go about
And
it.
it's never bothered me anyway, because of my surgical background. In other words, in surgery, in neurosurgery, some people don't do well. And again, I deal with exclusively with neurosurgical trauma patients. These patients come in and they are extraordinarily sick. And despite everything that you do, a lot of them do badly, by virtue of the injury. So you get used to dealing with that. That's okay. You know, if anything, it thickens your skin.
Yeah, marketing isn't that big a deal when you're talking about people's lives in the emergency room.
And that's the whole thing. So I've never
Sure.
really been
Mhm.
afraid to fail. I've always been the person to just stick my neck out. And I always tell my son, you know, he says, Dad, you know, should we, you know, expend X amount of dollars in this campaign and this campaign? I always tell him, Ellis, we haven't done it before. So therefore, we don't know if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. Do it. And that's the way as long as it's not something that's completely unreasonable.
Are we still on the what's hot? Or
Yes.
should I?
Yeah. What's
Okay,
hot?
Okay. So I want to just ask, because part of your on Senolytics, it was the weight loss, one of those levels. It's not weight loss, but you have a 3-month weight loss. What are you seeing are trends or anything from the weight loss side of things, that good or bad? Like what's hot that maybe you're like, it shouldn't be as hot as it is, or maybe it's what's hot, you know, like what's out there.
The answer that I believe that you're going for is any of the, I'll call them the glutides, which are, you know, the Ozempics, Mounjaros.
Yeah.
And we've been using those for a long time.
Okay.
So we've been using them, I think we're going on our 5th year. So long before the Kardashians got a hold of them, and Elon Musk and every other person in LA, Oprah. We've been using these medications, just like we were previous to the advent of these medications, using another diabetes medication, which is called metformin. So we use both of those in our clinic. And I've always been into these, whatever you want to call it, glucose lowering agents, if you will, that are used for diabetes. Because when your blood sugar stays down, you tend to be leaner. You are leaner. So we use those medications in our clinic, part and parcel to everything else that we do, to drive weight loss. And as I've said before about other things, we are unapologetically aggressive about using those medications. And the side effects that you hear in the news, you see Sharon Osborn, you know, looking cachectic, you know, in other words, horrible. It looks like she's anorexic, right? We don't have those problems in our clinic, because I blame that always, not on the medication, which is what the media does. They blame it on the medication. They tell you that it's terrible. No, I blame that on the doctor. We don't have any of those problems in our clinic. The worst thing that we have had with any of these agents is somebody developing a little bit of nausea, which is a very, very, very common side effect. And that means actually that the medication is doing what it's supposed to be doing, because it's sending a very, very robust satiety signal to the brain. And sometimes it's a little bit too aggressive for that individual. They're sensitive to the medication and they get nauseous. Big deal. It just goes away. That does not preclude their usage, but that is a very, very, very sort of hot topic nowadays, particularly because I'm always asked about the negative because of what's portrayed in the media, which is nonsense.
And I appreciate you explaining it. I'm glad that's because I was going to ask an Ozempic question just in general of your opinion, but it's really good to hear that, because I have a family member who's on it for diabetes and it's doing wonders internally and externally.
Right.
And then you see the horror stories, perfect example, which you gave. And it's just that there's so many positives, but then you see that horrible negative. So hearing an expert, a physician, a doctor who uses this in their practice, and, you know, there are more pros than cons, but when we're seeing the bad stuff, like you said, medication,
That's correct.
doctor is the catalyst for the medication use in theory.
That is correct. And again, as you had alluded to, you hear only the negative, because if it bleeds, it leads. You know the deal, right? So they're not going to talk about the positives. Let me just sum it up this way. I can tell you, and I've said this to many patients, and also on public record, these medications, so the GLP-1s, the GLP-1 agonists, so you want to call them Ozempic or Mounjaro or Saxenda or Wegovy, I don't care. They're very, very similar. These medications will prove to be as impactful on our health as the advent of antibiotics.
Wow.
That impactful. Why? Because obesity, right? Obesity slash diabetes underpins nearly all of these diseases. You do understand that if people were leaner, right? Say as an example, you could give this to 50% of the population. 50% of the population, if you can get everybody to somewhat close to an ideal body weight, all the hospitals would close because they work on small margins.
Wow.
It's just the truth,
Yeah.
right? So when you hear all of this negativity, please try to use your filter and understand that you can use these medications very, very successfully if you have, if you're properly supervised, and they can be dramatically impactful on your health. Most people that walk in the clinic, or just most people that are walking around, can afford to lose a little bit of weight, right? I think what's ultimately going to happen is that people are just going to be on forever small doses of these medications just to keep them so they can sort of get out of their own way, if that makes sense, right?
There is a
'Cause we,
combination of that with something else.
of course, and these medications are not to be used in isolation. So you're not going to be on Ozempic and then go eat, 6 slices of pizza every
You're not
single day.
supposed to be able to, right?
Right. That is correct. But it's part and parcel to everything else. So you must exercise. You must have your hormones optimized. You must keep stress at bay. And yes, if you're going to be on semaglutide or Ozempic or Mounjaro or whatever it is, right, that's just an adjunct. But that really, really can move the needle for a lot of people, because most people, as I had said, can afford to lose a little bit of weight. Most people can afford to eat a little bit less.
Well, I don't know enough about some of these topics to be able to ask you a question, but I guess what I'd say is, what is hot in hormone therapy? Is that a proper question?
I would let me flip that around and tell you that what is hot as far as weight loss, and this is not a hormone. It's GLP-1 is a peptide. I wouldn't call it a hormone, but nevertheless, it's a peptide that talks, that sort of it's stomach to brain interaction or small bowel to brain interaction. So that's where it's released, and it talks to the brain, and it sends a satiety signal to the brain. What is hot? Well, Ozempic clinics.
Yeah, but you talked about hormone therapy. Is that what you're talking about when you talk about Ozempic?
Well, no. So that's why I was saying I would, because there's nothing really that's hot as far as hormone therapy is concerned. Hormone therapy is hormone therapy, right? So you either, when you're talking about something like testosterone, it's either pellets, it's a topical cream, it's injection therapy. But what is really hot nowadays, because that's sort of, I'm not going to say it's old hat, but hormone clinics have been around for a long time. And again, we're not one of them. We combine the two, though. What is hot is these Ozempic, these semaglutide clinics. And actually, there are companies that are wrapped around, a company called Calibrate, that are wrapped around these medications, where you can literally go online, speak to a doctor that is licensed in all 50 states, or one of their team members that's licensed in your particular state, and literally get a prescription for these medications.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and also Roe is like that as well, I believe. There's another company called Roe, which I think does male hormones, maybe even female hormones as well. It's RO, and I believe that they do that as well. As it turns out, I don't know if you guys knew this, Weight Watchers just bought one of these Calibrate type companies, which again offers these GLP-1s to people virtually. Why? Because if you think about it, it's an existential threat to their
Oprah dropped
to their
them
being.
and went over to Ozempic.
Right.
So this is probably a good catalyst for them too, to go, we just lost our big gun
That's
here.
correct. And again, people are not going to use the cards, with the fancy colors and the numbers and things like that, when they could just take a shot once a week and get the exact same result or better, right? So Oprah, as bright as she is, and as much grit as she has, she just could not control her eating, right? So what you do is you inject the control for the eating, which is what Ozempic is, right? You inject the satiety signal, and that solved her problem. And she will never be heavy again. Never, because she's never going to come off the medication. If she has good doctors, I should say, if she has good doctors, she will never get heavy again.
Well, let's take a second break, And our final segment is Plead the Fifth, where we're going to ask a few embarrassing questions of Dr. Osborn and see if he will plead the fifth on those. We'll be back after this word from our sponsor.
Step into our state-of-the-art innovation lab and create your digital future. Oz uses cutting-edge technology and 22 years of industry knowledge to enhance customer experience through digital innovation in a variety of expertise. Oz is a leading global consulting company whose services and solutions are trusted by startup, midsize, and even Fortune 500 companies. Get to know more about Oz's Salus, a mobile solution bringing us back to max capacity, and their latest solution, Rainmaker, saving insurance companies years of work. To learn more about Oz and their exciting technologies, visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Welcome back to the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank. We're here with Dr. Brett Osborn, and we're learning all about holistic approaches to health, prevention. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So at this point of the show, we asked Dr. Osborn some questions, and he can plead the fifth once. And after he pleads the fifth once, then he has to answer our questions or take Jessica out to lunch. A healthy lunch.
I am hungry.
A healthy lunch. Okay. So, Dr. Osborn, you talked about riding your motorcycle at 100 miles an hour on I-95. Well, that wasn't you. That's not you. But you ride your motorcycle quite a bit. That's one of your kind of activities that is very meaningful to you. Do you wear a helmet?
Always. Helmets. So I take care of a lot of motorcycle accident victims at the hospital. A lot. Motorcycle helmets have been shown to reduce fatalities by 49%. That's a big thing with me, is wearing helmets.
Good. I thought you would answer that way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have Jessica, do you have a question?
I'm thinking.
Okay, you're thinking.
You're
Okay,
inspiring
you have
me
your
with a question.
you have your son working with you as the acting chief operating officer of your business.
That's right.
What would he say is your biggest flaw as a business person?
I would say probably not being as open-minded as I could be, although I've learned that. Girls, they're over there laughing because I'm very set in my ways, and the reason why is, and again,
Big laughs over there.
yeah, well they know me because I'll just blurt something out, and it's unfiltered, and it's very strong. Let's put it that way. But Ellis, my son, he keeps me, I would say, in check in that regard. The thing about it is that it's a little bit hard. And I told you my practice is sort of on this spectrum, right? So I have neurosurgery over here and I have longevity over here, but there's a spectrum, right? It's not just you go in this door for neurosurgery and you go in this door. We see patients in the same office. And in my, the way I view these things, this is what happens if you don't do this, right? So it's all one thing. However, when I am over here in neurosurgery mode and somebody has a bullet in their brain at 2:00 in the morning, we're not playing games. So it's hard for me to get rid of that and come over here and just be very open-minded. That's not a business. This is a business, right? In other words, neurosurgery, those patients, they're going to be there. There's no crafting a business. There's no marketing. Well, if you get shot in the head, or, somebody hits you over the head with a bat, or somebody assaults you, then you come to me. That's not the way it works. This is completely different.
Right.
The problem is that I'm who I am.
Right.
I'm the neurosurgeon first, and then I come over here and I do this. So I would say that is something that, for me, just needs to be learned. And I think I've done a pretty decent job of it over the last several years.
So the conflict between those, managing that conflict, managing that difference.
Yeah, I mean, here you're managing a P&L.
Okay. So what is your biggest pet peeve about him?
The fact that he argues with me.
when you're always right.
No. Ellis is he's a great kid. He really is. He's just there are some things about him, obviously, and he's 21 years old, that are a bit more youth-minded, I would say, which is, what you would expect. He just hasn't walked on this earth, as long as I've walked on this earth. I'm twice his age, right? So I think that he's got some learning, to do. But overall, I've been, I'm ecstatic and enthralled, by his involvement. I mean, he's truly been an asset and has vaulted the practice and the practice performance and just the way things are running, the practice logistics significantly.
Do you see this as a family business at some stage?
My other boy is starting medical school in 6 months. So I've told him, his name is Jack. I've told him that get through medical school and residency quickly so that you can come and you can take over this business. Ellis, the COO, is I don't think he has any intentions of sort of doing this long term, although he has mentioned it to me several times. I don't think that that's what's sort of in the cards for him. Like I said, I think he's very, very interested in fintech and growth equity, things like that. But nevertheless, I have no plans on ridding myself of him, so to speak, at the business level. As long as he's got the time and is committed to doing this and improving, the business, absolutely, he's gonna stay on board. But he's really taught me how to look at this more as a P&L, managing a P&L, managing the balance sheets, as opposed to just sort of being a doctor, which is what I was trained to do. Now you're doing it more. Well, sure, you are always a doctor, but you also have to have this business acumen. And I will tell you that people that are going into medicine, if you don't have any element of business acumen or training, you're in big trouble.
Yes, because you'll be investing in all kinds of things.
Yeah, you absolutely will.
So okay, I'm very interested in this. I want to come in. I want to get the elite treatment. How much is that going to cost me?
It's going to cost you some money.
Well, tell me how much.
It's somewhere around, ladies, what is it? About $14,000, I would say, for that full first year. And you have to remember, medications, the majority of your medications. So not only is it just the office visit and the year-long support, the cancer screening, it's also the majority of your medications are also included. So it is full service, and the medications are actually delivered to your home.
Okay.
This is not something where you go in, you see the doctor for 15 minutes, they write you prescriptions, and off you go.
Okay.
That's the standard
Right.
hormone clinic.
That's a great selling point right there, because you just saying it's, the cost. I know from insurance and whatnot, you get blood taken and they're like, your insurance covered $1,000. And you go, that was for 2 vials of blood. So the fact that not only you have the full panel of all of those tests and MRIs and scans and whatnot, but it's like an investment. It's an ongoing treatment that's not, it was great to meet you, we'll see you in 3 months. It's more of, yeah, we're going to keep checking in, but it's all encompassing, minus some possible additional out of pocket costs. That's great.
You're correct. And as I always tell my patients, and it's sort of an odd word to use, but we are extremely, with our patients, we are extremely invasive. We want to know everything about them, everything, right? And it's a very, very family sort of oriented, the girls will tell you, sort of fun environment. I have a great team of gals that work with me. It's sort of like, like Google. We have a performance center in the place. So there's a fully built out gym with a brain training machine on the wall. You have full access to that, and we have we have a lot of fun there. But we want our patients to be, right alongside with us as family. We want to know everything about them. If they don't feel right one day, they need to call the office. They need to email the office, and the response times are exceedingly quick and exceedingly low. In other words, if you email us at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday, you're getting an answer at 10:30 at night on Saturday. I know that sounds totally out of the realms of reality, but it's not.
That's great. I mean, I like you mentioned the 15-minute time frame most doctors have.
Right.
And I will say, like my father, he will literally go and write up a document of all the questions, because he's like, I know that doctor comes in and out, and he will like say, you have to answer all of these because I'll forget, number one, if I don't have it written down. But number two, I know I have you for this short amount of time. And it's that getting to know your patient, and also like my experience was very much like I'm not feeling rushed. So 10 minutes in, I go, oh, I have a question. And then 20 minutes, oh, I have another question because it's coming to me as I'm working with that doctor.
That's right.
That's great.
This is ongoing throughout the year. And let me also tell you, Roland, that this is not something that you do once and then, oh, I did this thing. I did Dr. Osborn's, protocol at Senolytics, and then you're gone. No. These are patients. We want our patients to be, and it has nothing to do with money. We want our patients to be our patients forever, lifelong. In other words, I always tell people when they come in and they're 50, I always tell them, look, I want you to be here until you're 90. Okay. And the way you will go out of this world, okay, is fully functional. You crash your Ferrari into the wall when you're 90. That's the way we want our patients to be, not going like this, for 25 years, which is what most Americans do.
Well, let me ask you another one really quick, see if we can get you to plead the fifth here. You talk about these, a lot of these clinics, the hormone therapies and things like this. What is the worst example of that? Give us the name of the place that's the worst example of that in South Florida. The biggest rip-off clinic you can think of.
Nope, not doing that.
So want to plead the fifth?
Pleading the fifth on that one.
All right,
That's a
good.
good
Thanks.
one.
Okay, great. Now, I have one last question. Do you have another one? Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Which of us do you think, if Jessica and I came in, which one of us do you think has the best chance for success? Pick one or the other, based on what you know of us in the last hour or so. Which one of us has the better chance of success if we come in and get the program?
What's your definition of success?
No, it would be both of you, because if you follow what we tell you, if you just follow what we tell you, it works. It doesn't work 99.9% of the time. It works 100% of the time.
Okay,
I
so
know that sounds totally ridiculous, but it's not me. This is just science. If you show your body the right signals, so good nutrition, strength training, medications like hormones, as an example, the right supplements, keep your stress levels at bay, you will be healthy.
So I have just as good a chance as her, even though she's young and healthy, and I'm
So Roland,
arthritic and old.
go see him, and in 1 year, we're going to have a field day, and we're going to race each other, and we're going to do pull-ups, and we're going to do burpees.
And we should finish in a
One
photo finish,
photo
right? We should
finish
not
with the
right.
tape, we can run
Okay.
through.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brett Osborn. This has
great.
been a great
Thank you.
addition of the Shrimp Tank. If folks would like to get in touch with you, learn more about your company, and please repronounce it again for me, because I'm old and feeble and cannot.
Yes.
Senolytics.
Senolytics.
Senolytics. I got it. Okay. Well, tell us how we get in touch with you.
That's right. So our website is senolytics.io. So it's SENOLYTIX.io. We have a YouTube channel. You can search for me, Dr. Brett Osborn, on Facebook. Our phone number is 561-935-9233. 561-935-9233.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see everybody next week for another edition of the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win.